Good afternoon, Cedarfield family. This is Michael Shaw, serving as Executive Director. It's April 27th at 3 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in live here on Monday with residents or team members. We appreciate that. If you are viewing this video tonight, we implore you, if you have any questions related to the content of what you're about to hear, please feel free to call the administration suite, or you may contact any of the department directors for answers to your questions. We are all working in concert together. So I hope you all had as best you can, a relaxing weekend. I was here most of the weekend on two particular shifts, 7 to 3 and 3 to 11. And I must say, the residents of Cedarfield are doing an amazing job. Even on a weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, when typically there isn't as many activities as there are Monday through Friday, I would have thought I would have seen more residents out and about in the courtyard or walking around in and around these beautiful 100 acres. We did see, and I did see, a healthy balance of people trying to take advantage of the property given the weather. But for the most part, residents were resilient this weekend and adhering to social distancing when you were in the hallways, and definitely self-quarantining. So I appreciate that. I've been reporting to the Department of Health almost 2 or 3 times a day now, and I know that Dr. Danny Abula and the entire epidemiologist team thank you as well. So all of last week, and I'm going to continue this theme here this week, we have a couple of segments for this live streaming. One is a COVID-19 communication, which we're going to get into here in the next 15 minutes. There's 6 components to this communication, and I'm trying to keep these 6 categories with relevant and timely information so that the residents know what we're doing here in Cedarfield as it relates to our preparedness plans, etc. So intend to go over that. We have some administrative tidbits and some announcements, and we do not have any guests today other than the fact that we have some spiritual help from words of help from Trish Carter, and Trish is also now the anchor for our Good News segment. So stay tuned for that in about 30 minutes. So as we were saying last week, which still holds true to this day, April 27th, that we are striking a balance here of transparency and confidentiality, privacy. So that's going to be our theme again this week. I am absolutely committed to providing the residents and the team members and families. I'm going to start ramping up communication with the families here with accurate information to assure everyone of what our plan is this week for the well-being of everyone and for the health of everyone as we all go through this pandemic together. It's here now, and we're going to go through it together. It's not just a worldwide pandemic. So the first area of our communication has to do with our preparedness plan. And I want to read to you an email that I received today, which pretty much sets the tone, I think, of where the majority of people are at with their thinking of our preparedness plan. So again, this email came across my desk around 9 o'clock this morning, and it reads as follows. Cedarfield now has 4 cases of COVID-19. and they are only testing people with symptoms. This brings little comfort to me, knowing that it can be carried by asymptomatic and transmitted by other people. The residents have been isolated since March. The information out already, it seems like Cedarfield is working very closely with Virginia Department of Health, and that they're addressing every issue in detail except testing. Please help me understand why the employees and residents are not being tested. I understand why the general population doesn't need everyone tested, but in these long-term care facilities, it seems that they are all at risk, and different rules should be employed. Please explain. So that's the email I received this afternoon, or this morning, which is a great email, and I think it's on the minds of everyone here at Cedarfield. The tone of that email and the content related to testing. So throughout the weekend, a little bit more about testing and preparedness plans. Throughout the weekend, yours truly have been working and Matt Dameron have been working very diligently with the Department of Health. We've been on the phone with them several times, Friday night, a few times on Saturday, and then yesterday, talking with them and reviewing trace sourcing, so following the trail of different situations that we've had. We reviewed with them the onset of symptoms with the residents in this one particular area. We reviewed with them onset of symptoms of team members. We talked with them about the tests that we've already have performed and when we performed those tests. We showed them floor plans of Cedarfield, the cottages, independent living apartments, our memory support area, assisted living and healthcare. We showed them all of our floor plans. And yesterday, Matt and I, over 2 hours, we compared our preparedness plan with one specific person at the Department of Health and reviewed with this person the site visits that happened last Monday with the team of epidemiologists. And we got real specific about timelines and when did things happen, when did we start layering in different parts of our preparedness plan over the last 8 weeks. It was truly a great, transparent discussion. And so in partnership with the Department of Health, we're going to come up with another layering of our plan. And Matt Dameron and I have been working very closely with the Department of Health over the last 48 hours on what that plan will be, and we're going to implement it very soon. So I'm trying to finalize many details throughout the evening here, and I hope to make an announcement tomorrow, late in the day here on this live stream. We'll utilize this mode of communication to the residents to let everyone know the announcement that I have about what our next layer in of our preparedness plan is in order to combat this COVID-19 situation at Cedarfield. So stay tuned for tomorrow. I am 99% sure that all the details I need to iron out here over the next several hours will come to fruition. and we'll be able to make an announcement for tomorrow. In the meantime, part of our preparedness plan, we are trying super hard at restricting all residents to their rooms in the licensed areas. So I want you to know that as hard as this is, particularly in Sunshine Plaza, and to another different extent up in healthcare, we are trying our hardest to keep residents in their rooms. This has been part of our plan over the last 3 weeks, and there's been some anxiety with families and residents in independent living who might have information at your fingertips that some residents are in the hallways, some residents are eating outside of their room, and there are occasions where not every resident is inside of their room, but the staff is really doing an amazing job of this piece to our preparedness plan, of keeping residents in their rooms. Just as you are in independent living in the cottages. Imagine how difficult that is for somebody who is more compromised and has less executive functioning and reasoning skills. So, wanted to let you all know that we're working very diligently on that. We are working very diligently on access points. So, the team that works in certain areas have very specific entrances that they can only use. For example, I'm only allowed to use the entrance right here outside of the administration suite. That's my entrance to get to my office. I did, throughout the last 3 years of working here, I'd switch up my entrance all the time to kind of get a snapshot of different places of the campus. But I haven't been doing that over the last 2 weeks. This is my main entrance. I come down the hallway, go straight into my office, and then work from there. Same goes for everyone, housekeepers, CNAs, LPNs, Eddie, Trish. We're all working off of the same plan. Everyone on the team is to be wearing masks, and in the healthcare area, we have employed team members to wear N95 masks in this one specific location, and we implemented that on Saturday. So those are the main pieces to this preparedness plan that are probably different than usual. One more thing about our preparedness plan, which goes along with part of our COVID-19 communication, has to do with what are we doing with the Department of Health in concert with looking at our plans and how those plans compare to the reality of our current situation. So again, tomorrow I'm going to share with you some new plans that we're going to layer into our overall preparedness plan and that we will be implementing later this week. But in the meantime, I just wanted you to see that this is the epidemiologist's report from their site visit last Monday. It's 7 pages long. Dr. Danny Avula and Rebecca Lewis did really a great job of summarizing their visit. And all of what is in this report also happens to be what is in our preparedness plan. And so, I hope that gives you some comfort level that given their site visits last Monday, where there was, again, 4 epidemiologists here touring the community, reviewing our preparedness plan, reviewing floor plans, looking at CDC recommendations, that their overall recommendations that are in this report are reflected within our preparedness plan and have been reflected in there for several weeks. So the second piece to our communication plan has to do with disclosure of information to the residents, the families, and the team members. So we had said last week that we were going to share updated information, the cumulative number of residents and team members who have been tested, and update the number of confirmed COVID-19 tests regularly. So here's our list to date. We have 7 residents that have been tested, and 5 residents of that 7 have been tested positive. And the same goes for to date for the team members. We've had 6 team members tested, and 4 of them are tested positive. So again, from last week, we're not going to disclose the name or the health status of any other individual with these confirmed cases. Which leads me to the next most frequently asked question over the weekend. The first one, as I just mentioned, had to deal with testing. The second most frequently asked question is, well, Michael, this doesn't do us a lick of good. We want to know who they are, whether they're male or female, or where they are, or we want to know a lot more detail. This is not transparent. And I understand why residents want more information. You want to know if it's your neighbor, if it's someone across the hall from you, whether it's down the hall, if it's in, your neighbor in a cottage. I understand that. So I, as just a double check, I talked with the Department of Health over the week, and I said, here's some of the anxiety of the residents of Cedarfield. And if you were in my shoes, how would you be advising me to lead this community around this particular frequently asked question? And the Department of Health said the following to me, and I happen to really agree with them. If every resident on this campus is practicing social distancing, and if everyone is self-quarantining the way that we should, then you shouldn't have to worry about what the name of the individual is, where they live, how often they've been in your maybe outside of your front door. All those particular questions are really not that important, because if everyone's practicing what we've been talking about over the last 8 weeks, then you are safe. You are safe. In order for so we were talking about this during our leadership hub, we were talking about someone that is exposed. I don't want to be, so when residents have been emailing and calling the administration suite over the weekend, the next layer of that is we want more information. I don't want to be exposed to the disease. And so maybe this will help with exposure. Those of you that still have a question in your mind, well, I don't want to be exposed to COVID-19. And if we have almost 10 people here that have a confirmed case, chances are it could be exposed. So here's the definition of an exposure. The CDC and the Department of Health here in Richmond define a prolonged exposure, A, that you must be within 6 feet of somebody who has COVID-19. That's why we practice social distancing. Secondly, you need to be exposed to that person for more than a few minutes. So we've come to an agreement with the Department of Health that a few minutes is somewhere between 7 and 8 minutes. A couple is maybe 2 or 3, and a few minutes is around 7 or 8. So you have to be within 6 feet of the individual and within that 6 feet for at least 7 minutes. Furthermore, the individual has to be exhibiting respiratory secretions. So if they're sneezing and coughing, if you happen to touch a dirty tissue within that 6 feet, and you're not wearing any mask, that would be an important element as well. So all of those things have to be in place for you to be considered exposed. You can't, if someone has a diagnosis of COVID-19 and you happen to be living next to them in a cottage, in an independent living apartment, in an assisted living apartment, or even in healthcare, this is a disease that is transmitted from human to human. And so, just because of your general location doesn't mean that if you are next to somebody that you can, quote unquote, catch it. There was probably about 15, 16 emails or phone messages this weekend about, well, I'm afraid I'm gonna catch it at Cedar Field if I walk the hallways or if I leave my apartment. And that's not true. You can't just catch it because Cedar Field has some confirmed cases. So I hopefully that puts a little bit more definition around exposure. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more comfort that not only all those plans, but also Rebecca Lewis and Danny Alabella report here comports with our plan. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more comfort that tomorrow you won't hear me again just talking about what we're doing as we've had in the past, but we're going to talk about a layered in plan, a new approach. And if anybody has any questions with these first 15 minutes, 20 minutes here, please certainly call down to the administration suite or feel free to email me and I will get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. The fourth area of our communication plan has to do with team members. This is just a reminder to everyone that team members who do test positive will not be permitted to return to work until they're released by a physician. So I just mentioned 5 team members have been tested positive, and those team members will be quarantined for 14 days, and then a physician note has to accompany them back to work. So we talked about our confirmed cases. I did make an executive decision since we had 2 memos back to back. We did, in the beginning of this pandemic, we had said that we would be providing a memo every time a case happened or was tested positive. We did have a 5th case come back positive yesterday, and I felt that rather than sending another memo on a weekend, on a Sunday, when I knew nobody was at risk, that I would wait to relay this information via this live stream. So we did receive notification that through the Henrico Health Department that our 2nd independent living resident has tested positive for COVID-19, and the wellness clinic team, in concert with the Henrico Health Department, We've been working to make sure that there's no other resident in independent living that has been exposed. And with all the information that we have at our fingertips, and Hopper and I are 100% confident that there are no other residents, either in the cottages, in assisted living, and or the independent living building have been exposed to the virus. If we had known that, we would have communicated that to the residents. But I cannot stress enough, as the last two memos have highlighted, that all residents are to remain in your apartment, your cottage, your assisted living or healthcare room, unless it's critically necessary for your health and well-being. If you need to get outside and stretch your legs, that's great. Please do so. We are going to have, looks like the temperature is going to be increasing here over the next couple of days. I would just suggest that just take the time to go through your own precautionary measures. So if you're going to go outside, Parkview entrance is easy because you got the automatic doors. But if you're leaving an entrance in A wing, B wing, or C wing, or even those of you that are living in the cottages, I would just prepare yourself to make sure that you, once you go to a handle, as much infection control that the Cedarfield staff are doing around the campus, that infection control is only as good as the next time we're cleaning it. And so you might want to take an extra precaution and maybe leave your apartment with a sanitized wipe, so you can hit that doorknob and turn that doorknob before you're actually going into the courtyard. So just take those extra precautions. Be vigilant. We're just about there with our peak here in the Commonwealth, and now we're going to be traveling down that curve. So all of the team members have been instructed that they are not permitted to work at Cedarfield without a mask. That is mandatory at this point, has been for the last 2 weeks. And when our team, who's up in the healthcare area, working in and around certain residents, we are wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment as directed by Matt Dameron, who's leading that effort in the healthcare area. They're practicing good self-isolation, good hand washing, good use of PPE. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to call the administration suite, and Renee and I will get back to you as soon as we can. For those families that are listening tonight, I'm going to place another call to the powers of attorney and responsible parties. For those of you that have contacted me and have asked me to update the database with the right phone numbers, I think we've captured everyone. Again, this is only residents whose or loved ones who have a resident living in our healthcare area, assisted living or Sunshine Plaza. I'm going to make another call to them tonight and update them about some happenings here at Cedarfield, and to really help them stay tuned with this live stream tomorrow night, so they can get some really accurate, timely information about what our next steps are. The supply shuttling program went really well today, and we will pick this program back up on Wednesday for those of you that live in the cottages. One construction update: the residents that live on the court, next week we're going to repave your driveway, your blacktop, not your driveway, your blacktop, or the court. So this has been on our project plan since February, latter part of January, beginning of February, and we've told the contractor that we still wish to proceed with this. So the contractor is working out a 2-day, maybe a 3-day plan to get the court done within a 72-hour period of time. So he's looking at the weather for next week, and that project most likely will commence and will be completed just for the court next week. So we're working out plans to make sure that any fire rescue needs to get into there can during these 3 days, and most definitely that the team can deliver meals, and that anyone who actually lives on the court, if you needed to leave, that you could hop in your car and go to the supermarket, etc. So that's probably the big update for construction. Anybody has any questions, you can certainly feel free to text me right now. The first question came in: after all these weeks of delivered meals, I was told today that I could not have a house salad with onions. What's up with that? So that's a great question. I'm not quite sure why we're not serving onions on the salad. Let me ask David Stewart to give us a reason why we're not serving onions today. Another comment about good song choice. Brooks and Dunn happens to be one of my favorites. Another question is, if a person in healthcare is symptomatic, are they still a priority level 2 for getting tested, or are they a priority 1, and how long before they're tested? So, if somebody is symptomatic in the health center, if a resident is, as of right now, if a resident is symptomatic, and let me define what symptomatic is. Symptomatic for me has changed. In the beginning of this pandemic, symptomatic was a fever, shortness of breath, coughing, sneezing. That's what was recommended by the CDC, so that was symptomatic. That definition has changed. What is my definition now, working with the epidemiologists from the Department of Health, if somebody is just not their same usual self from day to day, we want to know about it. So the nurses are checking everyone's temperature, they're checking everyone's oxygen saturations, they're checking for altered mental status, they're checking for even loose stool. Even if they look different, if their color, their complexion is different, I'm on the phone with the Department of Health and saying, I think we need to test this resident. And to date, I can tell you, they have not said, let's give it another day or so. As long as I'm calling them, they're saying, Michael, we'll get a test kit out to you, in an hour or so. And they've been, when I tell you that the Department of Health here has been incredibly professional, flexible, available, they have been a great strategic partner in this journey. So that's our definition of symptomatic. Is the 5th resident who has been tested positive in healthcare or independent living? The 5th resident who's been tested positive is in independent living. Asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic can aerosolize and spread the virus when talking. That's also true. This isn't a question, it's a comment. So if somebody, there is documentation now through the CDC that asymptomatic or symptomatic people could simply be just spreading the virus, even if we're talking. You may not even need a cough or a sneeze, but there is evidence that is the case. That is a true statement. And then the last question I see, how close to being finished is the retention pond? The retention pond is just a little bit off schedule right now, especially given all this rain. They reported this morning they're about 4 days off schedule, which puts them right at the end of the month of May. They had given us a target date of that third week in May, and right now it looks like due to the rain, but it does seem like they're making good progress. It looks like they're digging out almost 3/4 of that pond already. So it looks like the end of May will be the target date. Again, just want to remind everybody about Karen's nutritional segment on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Yours truly has been reading this book, and it was a really busy weekend for me, trying to balance taking care of my children while my wife was at work, and trying to work with the Department of Health practically all weekend long. So I know I promised on Friday that I'd give you all a little Cliff Notes version of what this book was, and some takeaways from it for everyone. I really didn't get to read this book this weekend, but I'm going to read it in little short chunks now, and as I do see tidbits of information, I will begin to share that with you all. Okay, Trish Carter with some words of spiritual health.
Good afternoon, Cedarfield. If you're like me, during this sort of unwanted time of extra time, you might be pulling some books off of your shelves that you have either loved through the years and would like to reread, or perhaps, if you're like me, you have books on your shelf that you always intended to read but didn't get around to. One book that has been calling me from my shelf, basically because of its title, is called Finding Calm in the Chaos. And I can't think of a better mission right now than to find calm in chaos. In it, I found a prayer that was so beautifully written, I wanted to share it with you. And I wasn't certain who the author of the prayer was, and so I emailed the writer of this book, who responded just minutes before this live stream began. Her name is Kathleen Long-Ostrom, and she was thrilled that her book had found meaning for me, and she was thrilled that I'm going to share this prayer with the Cedarfield community. And she adds that her prayers are with you as well. Let us pray. By faith, I come to you, gracious God, thanking you for the gift of this day and praying for the energy to face the week ahead. I offer my prayers, spoken and unspoken, trusting that you hear the prayers I keep inside as well as those I speak aloud. By faith, I trust in you, even when that trust does not come easily. Some days I feel stretched to the breaking point by life's challenges and strains. Help me turn my burdens over to you and to others who care about me, be it family, friend, or stranger. There are always those willing to pray for me if I allow them, and the Holy Spirit prays when I cannot find the words. By faith, O God, I trust that nothing is impossible with you. In a world that is torn to pieces day by day with violence and hatred and greed, I still pray for peace. I cannot change the world, but I can change myself to be a seeker of peace in my own life and home and friendships. By faith, I trust that you will never abandon me or your world. In Jesus Christ, I see that neither life nor death will ever separate us from your love. In you, O God, I trust, and in Christ's name I pray. Amen. Now that prayer was clearly written from the Christian perspective. I invite any of you who have some favorite prayers or poems from some other traditions, I would love for you to share them with me, and I will be looking for others to share as well. Now, we have a new segment we're calling Good News. And today, I am very happy to share with you the following good news. Ellen Hoffheimer's granddaughter, Sydney, passed the South Carolina bar exam and has a job. Here you can see Sydney with her father, Mark. I join Ellen in being so proud of her. It is such an accomplishment to pass the bar exam, and in today's world, to also have a job is a blessing indeed. Thank you.